Thank you to our friends at RefReps for their support of the From A to Zebra podcast. The full library of podcast episodes is now available at refreps.com under the resources page. And now, Season 3, Episode 8, Letter L, Legacy. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta with special guest Jimmy DeBell on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas, back with my co-host Nate Acosta.
On this episode, we are talking about the letter L and the topic of legacy, in a discussion about legends in officiating, the foundation they laid for us, and why it's important to remember those who came before us.
Our guest is a veteran college and NFL official who now specializes in officiating training. He worked in 4 college conferences from 1996 to 2009 as a field, side, and back judge before being hired into the NFL as a side judge from 2009 to 2014. In the NFL, he earned a postseason assignment in each of his 6 seasons.
In addition, he worked 2 seasons of Arena Football League and 1 year in NFL Europe. Currently, he works for Conference USA in 2 capacities as a downfield positions trainer and a film evaluator for officials coming into CUSA. He also is an evaluator trainer. He is also an evaluator trainer for the Mountain West Conference.
On top of all of that, he's in his 3rd spring working as an officiating supervisor for the UFL. I'm honored to be able to serve on the Battlefields to Ballfields Board of Directors with our guest today, Mr. Jimmy DeBell. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
That's quite a coverage of what I've done and how.
Did you know you had done all of that?
Actually, I have a whole presentation at clinics where I go to, and I talk about being a good crewmate. I think that's extremely important to being a good official, be a good crewmate. And I literally list every conference and league I've worked in all different capacities. And it starts with Sunday flag football at Edgerton Park when I was 22 years old. And it ends where I am right now, supervising in the UFL. And I beg to find anyone who has covered more different conferences in a variety and all in football. So it's kind of a neat presentation. People get a kick out of it.
That was cool.
Yeah. And my whole point of it is you must be a pretty good crewmate if you can end up in another conference when something goes good or bad in the one you're in, and you go to the next one and somebody still wanted me. It's like I was a Yankee fan growing up and still am. And Mickey Manow said on his tombstone, all he wants is I was a good teammate. He didn't want anything else. I mean, here's probably one of the greatest baseball players of all time, right? And it could have said he hit how many home runs and he's a Hall of Famer. And Mickey didn't want any of that. He just wanted, here lies a good teammate. And I don't know what my wife will end up doing with me when I'm gone, but probably just scatter me on a golf course or something, and I'd be fine with that. But if it does say anything, I just hope it says, here lies a good, father and crewmate.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you covered it all, Nate. Thanks. Thanks for, you just forgot Edgerton Park flag football.
Yeah, I didn't have that in your resume. Darn it. I'll make sure I add that.
Before we get into the topic of the day, let's talk about your journey. While we mentioned some of the highlights of your officiating career in your intro, can you tell us about how and why you got started in officiating and your path to the NFL?
Well, I kind of started that with the Edgerton Park flag football men's leagues. My father was an athletic director and a coach in the Rochester, New York area where I grew up. And he knew the man that was in charge of obviously if you're the athletic director and you officiate girls basketball yourself, all the sports ones. And the football guy that was running the chapter in Rochester needed officials and, knew that my father had a son that was into sports and said, hey, how about having Jimmy come and start officiating with us? And my dad came home and asked me. I said, sure, I don't really know what to do or how to get signed up, but I'd be glad to. And that's where the Edgerton Park flag football started. That was my first game ever. And quite frankly, Frank Marafino was the man that got me started. He said, if you can officiate this on Sundays at 9 a.m., these men out here with no pads on, pulling flags off each other and basically getting bloody and, starting fights, you can officiate every level. And I ended up being in the NFL. And quite frankly, the NFL was easier to officiate than that flag football on Sunday mornings at Edgerton Park. So that's where it started. I progressed up the ladder, blah, blah, blah. You name the level, I've been there. And, everyone always asks, well, how'd you get in the NFL? And basically that was a fluke too. I was working a Cornell Division I game in, upstate New York, and there was a scout for the NFL there for a different person on my crew. We didn't know at the time, they didn't tell anyone. It was double secret probation when a scout was at your game. And the following week, I'm walking in Boston with the crew, and one of the crewmates came up to me and they said, "Hey, you're supposed to call this number. His name is Bunky Reynolds. He lives in Philadelphia. He's an NFL scout. He was at our game and he was looking at someone else on the crew, but he really liked you." So I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean?" He goes, "Just make the call." And from there, it just progressed. And so I had no idea. People say, "What'd you do to get in?" And I was like, I worked a game at Cornell where a scout saw me and liked me. That's how I got in.
So we've had a number of former and current NFL officials on the podcast, and we always like to ask them what advice they have for officials who have the aspiration of getting into collegiate and professional officiating. What's your advice for them?
Well, we'll start with collegiate. You just got to be someone who is dedicated and has a passion for it and is willing to make mistakes at the level you're at and learn from them and not continue to make them, and eventually become the person that someone sees, like the scout at Cornell who saw me and liked the way I was working and moving and handling myself and communicating with the coach and the players. That's huge. You have to be able to communicate with the coaches and the players, or you're not going to progress up the ladder. And basically, just be happy where you're at. And if you do that, you go to the next level, you know, organically. You don't even realize it. You're not forcing it. You're not trying to network your way to that point. I'm not saying that you don't have to be networking and finding someone at another level. You do have to do that. You have to have a mentor, and we're going to kind of talk about that today. You have to have someone who sees something in you that can push for you at that higher level, because that's kind of the way it works, right? Nate and Dana, if you've been, around officiating like I know you have been, that people have to say, Dana can work. She could be in our conference. Take a look at her, to their supervisor. Or that's kind of what I do now. I chat with Mike DeFee in Conference USA and Mount West. Say, hey, I saw this kid at a clinic. I say kid because I'm old, but this young official at a clinic. We should keep an eye on them. They look like they're doing a good job in the conference they're in. Let's contact their supervisor. So it kind of happens without you knowing. And if you try too hard, it's not going to happen. Does any of that make any sense?
That's great advice.
And it's huge. And, before, thank you for giving our listeners advice. Also tell our listeners, what are some of your favorite memories on your on-field collegiate career, your professional careers, and of course, what do you enjoy now about serving as a trainer and evaluator?
So, college, I had the William, you can talk about games you had and stuff, and you can name if like I said, I've been so many conferences that if you name a stadium, I've been there. I've done a game on that field. And ironically, some of the not so big ones, it's like, okay, I've been to Notre Dame, but I had William and Mary Richmond. It was such a rivalry, and it's such a cool atmosphere of the two towns that are near each other, Williamsburg and Richmond, that there's just an excitement that game had that, you'd say, well, really? That's like one of the memories you remember of college officiating? And it's like, yeah, I do. There's nothing better than doing your first game in Green Bay, and I'm not a fan of teams in the NFL, but I am a fan of nostalgia. And, I grew up with the Bart Starr plastic helmet when the two, bars around it at Christmas, and just doing a game there really meant a lot. I'm in my home office, and there's not a lot of stuff on the wall, but there's a few things. And I have a picture of me with a friend of mine's little boy in Green Bay, and I'm holding him. It's like,
That's cool.
things like that, just you don't ever forget. When you're there, it's like the Yankee Stadium of the NFL. So, just little things like that. You could go on and on, but I don't want to bore your listeners with that stuff.
No one would be bored by that, by the way.
Okay. Well, there's so many memories of interactions with coaches. I had a really unique one with Ben Roethlisberger and Pitt and Mike Tomlin, the coach. My first it was my first preseason game ever. And of course, Mike Pereira, who we're going to talk about later, the supervisor that saw enough in me to hire me and is really someone who I would like to talk about as in legacy. Mike was at the game. So, it's like your first time ever on the field, and there's the supervisor who hired you. There's a little bit of pressure that, you're kind of dealing with. And we all know that a preseason game in the NFL, there's how many 90 players on the sideline, right? Because they haven't made any cuts yet. It's the beginning of preseason. The starters are going to play, 4 snaps, 1 series, and get out. So sure enough, I'm on Pittsburgh's side in the first half, and Roethlisberger and the starters do their 4 snaps and get out, and they're taking their shoulder pads off and standing. There's so many guys, they're standing like on the 20-yard line, and it's literally this wall of mountain men on the sideline, all wearing Steelers uniforms. So as a side judge, you run backwards and face the offense, and you're officiating the defensive backfield for the most part. So I'm running backwards, and I kind of like bump into some of the players that are not going to play again. They've got their shoulder pads off their way down the field, and it's basically Ben Roethlisberger to start with and a few of the other starters. So, I mean, you don't see how I'm built. I'm 5'11", 170. I'm a kind of a thin, smallish person, and he's a mountain of a man. I mean, literally wouldn't fit through my office door. He's so big. And another play goes, and I kind of have to go around him, and I'm like, okay, I got to say something. I don't want to. It's my first game ever in the pros. It wasn't a real game. It was preseason, but I'm like, hey, Ben, can you do me a favor and just like move back, because look at you and look at me. If I run into you, you're going to win and I'm going to lose. So he like looks at me, and by now Tomlin sees that I'm kind of chatting with Roethlisberger, and he's kind of walking down there. So Roethlisberger, kind of busting my chain or whatever, says, hey, coach, this rookie ref just called me fat. And Tomlin looks at me, looks at him, and he must like see a scared look on my face. And he looks at Roethlisberger and he goes, you are. And he walked away. So then I'm like, oh my God, here this quarterback that I'm going to have to deal with on the field all the time is, got his coach telling him he's fat. He's claiming I said it, even though he was, he knew what he was doing. So finally I get down in front of Tomlin again, and he goes, I owe you something, man. That I've been telling him he had to lose weight all along. I go, coach, I didn't call. He goes, I know what you did. You didn't do, but it was just that kind of interaction. I'm never going to forget it. If I ever see him again, I'm going to tell him I tell his story of saying that, and he wouldn't remember, but it's true. It's what he said.
That's fantastic. So, Jimmy, you're saying something that I really want to apply to my world. I talk a lot about the high school space because obviously that's where I am every day. But you were talking about how sometimes it's the game that's not seen as the big game that's the exciting one. So we used to, when Nate and I were in the New Mexico office, there were officials who just wanted that 5A boys game or whatever, and they
Yeah, right.
wanted the big games. But really, some of the best rivalry games were those Class 2A when both towns are there and everybody's nuts. Those are the moments where it's like, well, you could go call that where it's going to be a packed house, or you could go to that 5A game where there's like 35 fans. So I love that you said that even that applies at the collegiate level, where it may be a game that on paper you'd go, well, what is this? But then you go and it's this amazing atmosphere. So I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it applies at all levels.
Yeah. And that's truly like you're speaking to someone who, even getting from high school to college, someone approached me and said, hey, you've been in high school 5 years now. Back at that time in Western New York, you had to have 5 years of high school under your belt. I had no idea. And I still remember the man that asked me and he said, I'm on the college chapter. We'd like you to apply now that you've been here 5 years, and we'll take you in. You'll do clocks for a while till you learn. I mean, you had to learn from the bottom up in every level you were at. And I think, I maybe that helped me. Maybe it didn't, that I just wasn't like purposely trying to do 5 years of high school and then go to college. It worked out that way because I had some talent. I mean, you still have to have talent. You're going to eventually rise to the level where your talent kind of keeps you at that level. There's other factors that'll keep you at the level you're at, but that's probably the biggest one. We all like to complain and say, well, we didn't know anyone. We didn't play the politics game. It's like, you don't play the politics game to get to the next level. You're the best at that level, and someone sees it and recognizes it. There may be politics involved in that, but you have to be the best you are at what you at. And maybe enjoying the 2A game instead of the 5A is part of that. It's like relish with what you are doing and you can find joy in the whole town being at the game. And you know what? They're harder to work because that whole town is screaming at you the whole game. So it's how do you handle that whole town screaming at you that makes you able to take it to the next level. So, that's just my experience. That's my take on it. And that's what I kind of look for when I'm looking for people as a scout for, the conferences and the UFL and everything else.
Great insight. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to jump now into the topic of the day, which is legacy. So for our listeners, where this idea was kind of born from was the recent passing of NASO and Referee Magazine founder Barry Manow, who passed away late last month. So Jimmy and I had a very emotional email exchange after his passing, and that was really the inspiration for this episode. So Jimmy, in your opinion, what is the legacy that Barry left behind for the officiating community?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that he left behind for the officiating, community. I think the two on the surface that you obviously see are Nazo and Referee Magazine. I mean, I was talking to my wife before I came on, and Dana knows Lou. My wife is a very good judge of people, and the first time we met, she's like, "Man, I really like that lady." And I go,
I
"Yes."
I love your wife. She is wonderful, by the way. Please tell her I said hello. She's
You probably can
fantastic.
hear us, and
Good.
but yeah, she
Send you my love.
good. But I go, Referee Magazine, which Barry obviously founded and ran and dictated things for it. It made people realize that officials are humans too. We have a life. I was on it a couple of times for quotes and stuff, and it just the features that the magazine does about the top guy in Major League Baseball down to someone who's working a junior high game. It just brings to the forefront that we're all people and we all have good days and bad days, and the same can happen on the field, and you don't know what's going on in someone's life that affects that. But he also made it extremely important that officials helped keep youth sports and everything else going. That wouldn't be there without them. And I can honestly say I maybe took it for granted because I grew up in a sports home and my father was a sports official and a coach. But a lot of people don't realize that we're people. And I just think that's the legacy of Referee Magazine, in my opinion. It's made it great that our passion you can pick up a magazine and look at things that you're passionate about. If you're a sports official, if you're passionate about clothing, you can pick up, a magazine that helps you pick out stylish clothes. If you're passionate about wine, there's the wine magazine. There's all kinds of things. And he brought what we are passionate about to the forefront. That I just think those two things without him wouldn't exist.
I agree, and I say it often because this is the 50-year anniversary of Referee Magazine, which is incredible for print media for a magazine to last that long.
Okay, well, and I didn't realize it was, yeah.
So August is the 5th anniversary, and I think since his passing, I think we've all talked about it a lot more about how he had the foresight 50 years ago to understand the importance of having the magazine, having the organization to recognize officials, to advocate for them, to support them, to celebrate them, to recognize them, to explain what it is that they do,
No
because
one did that.
no one was thinking about that, and still to this day, there's some people who don't think about that. So for him 50 years ago to be that kind of a visionary, to understand how important that was, like, that's why, Jimmy and I had kind of an exchange via email, and I was explaining, it's almost like your North Star is gone with him
Yeah.
passing away because he was that steady presence that we all kind of looked to because we knew that he had that knowledge and wisdom to come up with a magazine and organization all for sports officials, any sport, any level. It wasn't just football and basketball. It was everything and still
No, it
is to this
wasn't
day.
the glitzy things, and that's what I'm
Right.
trying to say is, and I was wondering if you were gonna say, "Jimmy, can you just give me, like, a one-word answer of what you thought
No,
of Barry?"
never.
Well, I was gonna hedge my bets, and I was gonna put a hundred there, and I was gonna say visionary, which you already said, visionary leader. Like, that's what if you made me say, "Give me a one-word definition of Barry," and his demeanor of how he how he presented those important things. He was just like a statesman. Like no matter
Oh,
what
that's a
your
good description.
politic views are now, Barry would have been an incredible president. He would have been an incredible senator. He just walked in the room and you thought, here, this guy's a senator. You know, who is this? It's just
He's special.
special. Visionary leader is how I describe him. And he always had the same calming way of sending his message. And I didn't work for him like you guys do. But you had to feel that every day when he walked in the room, is that he's going to help us, number one, and he's going to deliver a message that's dignified and calm and well thought of. And we just don't have enough people in the world that lead that way. And, it's a big loss. He cannot be replaced. Someone can only maybe fill his role. It certainly will never be replaced.
And it's just, it's incumbent upon all of us to really carry that on, to carry on his legacy and the passion that he had. And, when when we were on the battlefields to ball fields board with him, he served on that with us. He didn't say a lot, but when he said something, it was just like, "Oh, Barry's talking," and it was just, E.F. Hutton, which
Yeah.
just dated me
Right.
quite a but it was one of those things where when Barry spoke, everybody listened, and that was the guy he was. He had that silent presence about him that you're right, statesman was a great word for
Yeah.
him because
Right.
that is exactly what he was.
He's Thomas Jefferson, or,
Yes.
you could just, and he would say that as a board member, he would also say it the right way. Like sometimes we have to be careful how we figure out what we're going to do and send the foundation in a direction. And it was almost like when you were kind of stalled or spinning your wheels, then Barry would speak up and he would say it and you'd go like, that's what we all wanted to say, but we couldn't figure out how to say it. It's like you started looking around and you looked at the little Zoom screen and you saw Barry and you're like, okay, yep, that came from Barry.
Write that down.
If it's like, can we replay that? And why can't I think of it that way?
So eloquent.
Yeah. I would always remind myself after he spoke, all right, you were a phys ed teacher. He founded Referee Magazine. I know it's nothing wrong with either one, but one's got a lot more vision than you have.
So we talk obviously all the time on the show about remembering those who came before us, and we were talking offline about that. So those are our mentors, the people who really set the foundation for us. Who are some of the officiating legends that you were able to work with, that you look up to, or who set that foundation for your career?
There's no doubt about it that I wouldn't have the career I had without Gerald Austin, the Conference USA supervisor. He is a lot like Barry Manow in that he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. He has a very calm, quiet demeanor and only speaks after several minutes of thinking. He's not a reactionary person. He thinks and then he states what he's going to say. And Gerald, every career has ups and downs. And I started progressing up the college ladder very quickly and ended up in the Big East. And for a lot of reasons, after 2 seasons in the Big East supervisor chose to not have me back. So it kind of was like a stock market rise and then all of a sudden a pummel. And I'm okay talking about that because I think listeners need to know it's not always going to be a straight trajectory. And my father used to tell me, like I've talked many times about him, he was my original hero. And he would say, you're going to see the same people on the way up that you do on the way down. So you treat everybody the same way, you treat them the way you want to be treated. And then when you're on the way down, those people are going to come to your back. They're going to help you. And Gerald crossed paths with me and the NFL still liked what they saw. They didn't agree with, what was being done by the Big East. Several people that ended up being hired in the NFL had the same trajectory once getting to the Big East at that time. And as a matter of fact, that came up in my interview. So anyhow, Gerald was there to pick me up, give me some jobs, give me some games, and let me prove myself. And then, the first year I was in Conference USA with him and only had a split schedule with someone, I had a bowl game. He liked what I did so well. So it was almost like going from no confidence at all because someone told me I wasn't good at what I was doing to an unbelievable amount of confidence, within a year and a half span. And you don't forget the person that said, I believe in you. And I've always tried to continue to do that as a instructor and I tell people I coach officiating now. That's what I do. I'm a coach who teaches officiating to people. And I always try to tell them I believe in them. If they had a bad game, they had a couple bad calls, they had things. We're all our own worst critic. We're already upset with what we just did. We don't need our coach or our trainer magnifying that in our heads. We need to be told, all right, you made these mistakes. This is probably why you made them. Show them what they can do to not keep making them. Be in better position, be a little more focused. There's tons of tech, but the bottom line is I still believe in you and I'm going to see you work better the next time. And I think that's what Gerald did for me at the perfect time in my career. So I have to start out with Gerald.
That advice, I'm so glad you brought that up because a lot of times people think if you've made it to collegiate officiating or you've made it to the NFL, that it was easy. Yes, that it was this uninterrupted upward trajectory. And that's not always the case. And I love that you brought that up from just the reality standpoint. Like there are going to be times where you stumble and
Yeah. I mean,
make
that's
sure that,
sports, right? I
yes,
mean, you stumble in
yes,
sports and we all idolize the athlete who stumbles and then gets back. They have an award named the Comeback Player of the Year.
exactly. It shows that character and grit and all of those things. And I think that,
Then
you
life
know,
goes at you too, not just officiating.
exactly, and remembering how to treat people and don't ever get arrogant about where you are because those people who have been your foundation, if you fall, you're gonna need them to catch you, and if you've burned those bridges, you're gonna be on your own, and that's a really lonely place to be anywhere, officiating, life, whatever the case may be, so I appreciate you bringing up the reality of officiating because it isn't always the easy ascension into the highest level. There are times where you have to reevaluate and pivot and be at as far as what that path is going to be for you. So thank you for bringing that up. That's excellent.
I think too, like I'm not positive of who all your listeners are, but there's probably plenty who don't officiate.
There are.
That's it's like looking back on it, I can say it now. It was very difficult at the time, but you really show people what you're made of when you're down. You find out who your friends are when you're down. You find out who really does believe in you when you're down, and you find a lot about yourself when you're down, and that's revealing who you really are. It's very easy for me when I'm in the NFL to be likable and to be feeling good. It's hard when you're down, and that's not just officiating, that's life. So when you're down, you have to show people this is who I really am. A lot of times, what got you into that thing is not truly you. So just like persevere. That's a great word of you can learn as an official and in life. And I'm not here to preach to people, but they are looking at someone who's had his ups and downs. And miraculously, some of the other people we're going to talk about always seemed to be there when I was down. And that showed the character of them. And it showed that maybe what got me there isn't always the end of it. And so I think you can take some like inspiration from that, even if you aren't an official. And if you are, you're going to have downs. You're going to have bad games. Even if they think you're the greatest official in the high school chapter, you're going to have a bad game. You're going to mess
Absolutely.
up. You're going to miss something. You're going to misinterpret a rule that even if you know the rules. So there's always those mistakes, but it's do you learn from them? And that's how you get to the next level. You made a mistake, you learn from it, you got better at it, you don't keep making it.
That's excellent. That's such a critical element of officiating is bouncing back from that adversity because it's going to come. It's not if it comes, it's when it comes and it's going to. And being letting yourself be vulnerable enough for somebody to talk you off the ledge a little bit, like, "You know what? You did screw that up, but it's not the end of the world," and listening to those people, those mentors, those people who have had your back all along, you have to be willing to listen to them in that lowest of moment. You know you're beating yourself up over it, but those are people that are really trying to help you to make that bounce back, to reset for the next game, to be able to perform again. I think that that's such a great that's a great point as far as how to recover a little bit from those moments where it's maybe not our best game.
And the best thing you can possibly do is admit when you were wrong, and
Absolutely.
even within the game to the coach, like, Coach Tomlin, if it happened the way you just said, it's not the way I saw it. I could be wrong. I might have got it wrong. I have a lot of stories along those lines. And quite frankly, in anything in life, if you make mistakes and slip up, the first way to get past it is to admit to yourself and to others, this is what I did. I made a mistake. I want to be better. I want to get better. Same in officiating. If you dig your heels in when a person who is truly trying to give you constructive criticism and make you better, it's just you're never gonna get better. You have to admit that. Um, and sometimes when you say that to a player or a coach, you find out that they're good people too, and they come back. I got a Jason Witten story if you want me to tell it. And
As a lifelong fan of that team, yes, I would love to hear Jason Witten stories.
then you probably remember the game, and when it happened, you wouldn't have said so fondly about me, but it was the
We
opening.
may not be friends.
Yeah, we would not be friends. Yeah, but it ended up that I was right. So in the long run, it's going to be okay.
That's good.
It was the opening game, and I can't tell you what season, but the Giants played the Cowboys in New York on the Thursday. Remember, it still is now. That Thursday night was the big game, and our crew was lucky enough to have it. And Dallas is marching down right near the end of the game on Thursday night, in New York, and they throw a pass that would have won the game. Witten clearly pushes off, turns around, catches the winning touchdown, and who's got the flag? Oh, that skinny sheriff, and the side judge has the flag, and Jason just a bit huge man,
He is.
doesn't feel it in the moment. It was just him in the moment because he's just a stand-up guy, super competitive, and kind of got in my face as we were running off, and felt that the call took the game away from the Cowboys. And as we're running under the tunnel in New York, he's like, you cost us. That was not. And I said, listen, Jason, I know we have you again in 5 weeks in Dallas. You watch that play and you tell me if I was wrong. I go, I'm fairly confident I'm right. I'm pretty good at this. I get it right more often than I get it wrong. And I go, and we'll be able to move on past it after that. Well, 5 weeks came and it almost had left my mind. I, wasn't thinking anything of it. Sure enough, in pregame, he comes up to me, big old paw. I mean, his hand is double the size of mine. He reaches his hand out and he goes, I watched that play, Jimmy, and you were right. I pushed off. And it's like now he can learn too and not make that same mistake in the game. It's like there is probably one of the best tight ends that I was ever on the field with,
100.
admitting he was wrong and learning from it and continuing his career like he did. And it might be such a small blip on his radar that he probably doesn't even remember happening, but it was impressive to me that he would do that,
Now he can teach, now that he's coaching tight ends at Oklahoma, he can teach them not to push off.
Well, shots when we don't see it, and that's what my whole point was, is like, you can be subtle all game long and get away with it, but when you're not subtle,
That was really obvious.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of times officials are afraid to admit they've made a mistake. And we used to talk at the high school level, and we still do, about when you admit you're wrong, you actually increase your credibility with the coach. Like,
Right.
why are you trying to lie to them? They saw it, you you screwed it up. And now you can't admit it every single play,
You
but
don't want to do it 10 times a game, but you can do it.
yeah, no, I missed that one too. But when there's something that you probably know in your heart of hearts that you got wrong, it is 100% okay to say, Coach, I missed that, because the coach is going to respect you a whole lot more and probably trust you a whole lot more because you're honest with him or her. And it's just, that's something that I think you have to, and maybe that's part of the ego that's needed for officiating a little bit, where it's like, well, I don't want to admit that I'm wrong, but it's absolutely okay to admit you're wrong. You said, just don't make the same mistake again. Like,
Yeah.
it makes
And
you better.
actually, I totally agree with you. It's okay. And you can actually say, if it happened, if you want me to help coach up officials right now, you can
I do.
say, Coach, tell me what you saw. And then he says it. And then you say, okay, that isn't what I saw. This is how I saw it. But if it came out the way you did, then I was wrong. So it's like kind of like hedging your bet, because sometimes a coach is just doing it and knowing you're right probably isn't the right way to say it, but you're confident that you're right. It's like you saw it. He's only seeing his team's side of it. But you also know the times where maybe you're wrong, like what you're talking
sure.
about. So when it's starting to get towards the time where we're like, whoa, maybe, I didn't see it the way he's saying, you can just say, Coach, if it happened the way you said, then I got that wrong, and I'm not going to get it wrong again. Like, show him that you're okay and that he will be okay. And also, it's not, he's going to have to move on. If you dig your heels in, they won't move on.
Exactly.
Don't want him to do that. And you also got to read the audience. Like, if a coach is never saying anything to you and then all of a sudden he says it, you probably got it wrong.
Exactly.
And people don't really believe it when I say it, but the higher you go, the less you're going to hear complaints. And when they complain, you might want to listen.
100%.
I used to like see the reaction of the D back and say, oh, wow, he got pushed off because he's mad at me and he hasn't said a word to me all game. It's like read the room. It's
I
like,
missed that.
yeah, a player is constantly yapping at you and questioning every little thing, then he's losing his credibility too.
Boy who cried wolf.
Exactly. That's a great, yeah. We all learned that story when we were little. But if
Exactly.
he's playing ball, then there's kind of a marginal thing and he comes up to you and he says it the right way, then you might have missed it. So just say that. Hey, you haven't said anything to me all game. And now you're coming over here. I might have missed that, and like you're kind of giving him, I'm not saying I did, but I'm okay I'm okay telling you I did if I did. And you're going to gain so much credibility with the players that they're going to want to see you again. Like that. My goal was always at the end of the year, I want the referee to ask for me on his crew again, because that means I helped him somehow. I used to say, my job's to make you look good. So I'm out here going to make you look good
That's
for the
right.
referee.
Good
And
crewmate.
I want the players to want me back. Like maybe I told them they did something good once in a while, or I patted them on the back, or I said, hey, good sportsmanship when you helped up an opponent. And like they're going to look at you differently if you respond positively to them as an official. They get a lot of negativity out of officials, and we don't mean to. When we throw a flag, we're telling them they were wrong. So is it terrible to tell them when they made a good play, or is it terrible to tell them, good job getting your head turned so you were playing the ball, I didn't have to call pass interference on you on that play? And then they're going to look at you in a different light.
Sure. And it's all of that. We talk on this podcast all the time about the importance of relationships and officiating. That's part of it, is building relationships and rapport with players, coaches, whoever it is, the chain crew,
Right.
whatever is working in that game at that time. It's so important to have those relationships and the ability to communicate. And it doesn't always have to be that the only way you can communicate is throwing a flag. I
Right.
think that that's such a great point at all levels in all sports. So I think I think it's universal.
Yeah. Yeah. Communicate is the big, I hope that was your C word, was it?
I think it was in season 1.
Yeah. Because if you can communicate, you can move to the next level. That's like without a doubt. Without a doubt. If you can communicate and you make, Richard Sherman was the Legion of Boom when he played with the defense, and he had a nickname. He called me the Skinny Sheriff. He'd say, "Okay, the Skinny Sheriff's here today, boys. We can't hold. He's going to get us if you hold." And that goes back to the first game I had with him, and I got him back to back defensive holds. Bam, bam, same 2 plays. And he looked at me. He's like, "Man, no one calls defensive passing or defensive holding 2 plays in a row." I go, "I do." And I go, "And if you hold again, it's going to be 3 in a row." And he just like, he's super intelligent, 4.0 student at Stanford. Some of his stuff is a skit, an act, but he got it. He's like, okay, if I hold, he's going to call it. If I play straight up, he's going to let me play. And you get away with some stuff when you play straight up.
They know how to adjust.
And he would have his whole team. And, it's
Skinny Sheriff, I'm going to call you that from now on. That is hilarious.
It's not a fluke that, I had their playoff game. Seattle wanted me because they knew they were in a straight up game and they knew where they stood. And yeah, now he works for the same place my daughter does at Amazon Sports. He's the Thursday night show. So I always tell her, hey,
right.
let Richard know the Skinny Sheriff's still watching him, But yeah.
I'm still going to throw a flag on him even though he's not playing.
But it's communication. They wanted you back because you communicated with them. They recognize, and you can do that at every level. Vince Lombardi games, the little kids are going to want you back if you treat them the way you would want treat them the way you would want them to treat your own kid.
Right.
And, instead of just always being the Skinny Sheriff. And, there was also times where we interacted and didn't have to throw the flag.
So true. So, you and I could talk for probably 53 hours. So I'm going to go back to the topic of the day. So why is it so, I know, what were we talking about?
I don't know. I warned you, Dana. I said, if you want
I love it.
Come on, this is going to get.
I told you it was going to be organic because we know each other. So it's great.
It's good.
So why is it so important that current officials know the history of those who came before them? And what can we do to carry on the legacy of our mentors, role models, and officiating heroes?
It's a great question. I think, why is it important to know the history? period, of the world, and your country or your state or your city or your town. It's because those were the people that came before you, and they set the foundation for what you're either reaping the benefits of, or enjoying, or being a part of, or continuing what they set forth. And it's so important. And if we stop, like, I'm the next like level, I guess. I'm mid 60s, and I need to continue what my legacy people, my Mount Rushmore, my mentors did for me. It's incumbent on me to do it for the next group, and that's what I'm doing in the UFL. I'm sitting there with guys and girls that are going to get hired in the NFL, and I'm giving back to them the knowledge that Tom Finken and Red Cashin and Jim Tunney passed on to me, and Gerald Austin and Mike Pereira. They gave it to me, and it's shame on me if I can't give it to the next group. And I think that you really have to have your head in the sand to think you got at any level without the help of those people and what they taught you. And I give full credit when I use a Tom Finken quote. Say, when I teach, I love doing clinics, and when I'm at a clinic, I write a bunch of Tom Finken quotes. It used to be a blackboard, and now it's the white board or whatever. And I always say, these aren't my quotes. These are Tom Finken's quotes. He taught me a way of remembering stuff on the football field that resonated with my brain. I mean, we all learn differently, and some people learn visually. Some people learn by writing stuff down by hand. Some people learn by typing it in their computer and looking at it. I learned by little short quotes would remind me of big situations in the game. So just to give you an example, when they're beat, they will cheat. All right. So that's referring to a defensive back. He's beat. What's he going to do? He's going to reach out and grab the receiver. He's going to cheat. He's going to commit a foul because he's beat. He's not going to do that if Dana's running a route and I'm covering her well. I'm just going to run with her and cover her well. But if she gives me a move and I bite on the move and I realize it, I'm going to reach out and grab her and keep her from going downfield on me. And to me, just those little quotes like that. He's carrying a hammer when he goes back, receiver goes back towards the linebackers and he's going to crack back block. He's carrying a hammer. So Fink would teach you, if the receiver starts on the outside and he starts going back towards the ball, he's carrying a hammer. And he would those little things just resonated with me. They were the ways I would learn. And I didn't miss the big fouls because of what he taught me. Well, I'm passing that on to the next people, because in the crowd, there might be 4 learners that learned like Jimmy DeBell learned. And if I can get to those 4 with some quotes, then I'm giving back. But I'm not going to take credit for those quotes. There was a man that taught me them that deserves the credit as he moves on in life and past, like Barry did. We deserve to give the people the lessons that Barry taught us and continue his legacy by saying, I learned this from the best. I learned this from the man who started Referee Magazine. I learned this from the man who had 4 Super Bowls at Side Judge. Though that's what I guess we're kind of doing with history, like your quick question asked.
Oh, that was so well stated. And, Jerry, Mark Bryant and I are very good friends. And, talking to him, we started recently having a conversation about people who he mentored and then who those people have mentored. And we were talking about, and we've talked about on the show before, about that officiating immortality. So, Jerry learned from someone and then he taught someone else and they taught someone else. So it's like Jerry's impact will continue on because people are still using the stuff that he learned from his mentors. I think that's such a special thing about officiating. And it's always hard for me. We were talking off air about when veteran officials and those who have retired feel like they're not relevant anymore. And I was having a conversation a couple of years ago with a young football official, and I mentioned Jerry Markwright, and he goes, "Who is that?" And it was the most heartbreaking moment. I was like, "What do you mean, who is that? How do you not know that?" So we started at the NFHS. We did this Legends Initiative where we were interviewing different people from different sports to really honor our past, because we understand the game has changed and there's all this technology involved and it's so different than it was 10 years ago, 50 years ago. But we have to remember those people who set the foundation and gave us legs. We don't exist without those people, and it's so important to celebrate them and remember them and pass on their nuggets and give them credit for those nuggets. I quote Jerry all the time. I quote Barry all the time because they had such invaluable information. I'm like, if I keep this for myself, I'm not doing them the respect or the honor that they deserve. So it's just so important. I love the little quotes that help you remember how
Yeah.
to work. I mean, that's super cool. I love stuff like that. I love things that rhyme. Like that's always
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And, I mean, Jerry is a legend. And I think the NFL Hall of Fame is missing the boat a little bit. And
100%.
one of my, very good people that I look back on is Art McNally, and Art's the one NFL person that was officiating that is in the Hall of Fame. And there's just so many more that the game wouldn't be where it is without those like pillars of the officiating. And I think that's part of why, a young official says, Jerry who?
Right.
Is like, you know what, if he was in the Hall of Fame where he deserves to be, and Jim Tunney deserves to be, and Red Cashin deserved to be, and someday Mike Pereira deserves to be, maybe not for his on-field work. He was only on the field for 2 years and they moved him into the office, because you become a supervisor because you have an ability. I think I have a good ability of teaching and presenting and helping gather all the stuff I took from everyone into my own style to present it. And Mike is the best at it. I mean, what he's
For
done
sure.
and with Battlefields and Ball Fields, when we get to that, it deserves to be recognized that that is something special that came through officiating and should be honored and not forgotten. A little bit of shame on it. I can say it because I don't work for them anymore, but a little bit of shame on the NFL for not pushing the Hall of Fame. I know it's two separate entities, but it's like they are the third team on the field. I mean,
Sure.
the officials are the third team in every sport on the field. The Hockey Olympics, that was so exciting. The officials that came from all over the world meshed together, and you didn't even realize the officials were there. They did that
Nope.
such a job at the Olympics. The game was what we were like mesmerized by, but those officials should have been honored a little bit too. It's like, wow, they really did a good job,
For
in
sure.
front of all those people. And, the upcoming labor battle, that's just like gonna happen, but it needs to be solved because it's just too important. And Jerry was a huge pillar. I lived it in 2012. In fact, I worked the first game back in Baltimore, and there was a picture of me on the Baltimore Sun. The punter of Baltimore was shaking my hand, welcoming us back. And the players wanted us back. The fans wanted us back. It was the only standing ovation I ever got in officiating, is walking out on the field in Baltimore on a Thursday night after the lockout. Just too important of a
It is.
role that we minimize it by not having people in the Hall of Fame, by, you know, letting a labor dispute bleed into the season. It's just, get it taken care of on both sides, and let's get it, the people out there that are trained and ready to do their best. Are they going to make mistakes? Yes.
Of course.
Multimedia and internet and everything has made it an unbelievable nightmare to miss a call, and people take things way out of context and threaten people. It's just, all those things need to stop, and we need to realize they are doing the best they can do. So,
And they're really good at it. That's
and
the thing.
really, yeah,
I think that that's the frustration as somebody who's been around officiating for as long as I have, for as long as you have, you were an actual official at the highest level. But people don't understand how good the officials really are until you have a situation where they're not working, and it's just they make it look easier than it is part of the problem, I think, and I agree with you on so many counts. The fact that there aren't more officials in the NFL Hall of Fame just makes me so sad because what they do is so important. The games don't exist if the officials aren't there, and
right,
some people feel like they're disposable and, "Oh, we'll have robots call and whatever," and I'm like, "Yeah, good luck with that. Because guess what? Humans still build robots, so they're still not going to be perfect." So I
right,
think that expectation of perfection is just insane, but, that's another topic for another
yeah,
day.
but-
Yep,
yeah.
so
But I
you
mean, it parallels with the way people like Jerry feel, because there aren't enough of the next generation, which I guess I am, like letting them know that like they went out of their way to help you. You need to go out of your way to remind them, like
Right,
give them a call or tell them what they did for you while they're still around, because when they're gone, you're going to wish you had done that. And no matter what level, like there could be someone that is one of the best high school officials in his area's chapter. Somebody helped him get there, and that person's getting close to not being there anymore because it's the next level of age. So just pick up the phone and say, hey, just want to let you know I had the championship game this year, and I would have never had that if you hadn't taught me what you taught me. And bring out that he's carrying a hammer, or when they're beat, they will cheat, and say, you taught me that. Like, Fink knows how I feel about him because I've gone out, and I'm not tooting my own horn. And there's people that do that for me. They say, the game I was at in UFL last week, supervising and training, there's an NFL official that came down and getting more snaps to get more experience, struggled a little bit in the first couple of years. And both of them said, we really appreciate what you're doing. You believe in us, and you're making it's probably they're perfectly capable. Their confidence is just starting to get muddled because there's just so much pressure from the outside and so many things going on with grading and evaluations, and you can't officiate that way. Okay. If there's one thing that the officials that are listening learn from me, just trust your gut and officiate the game, and don't let all that outside noise get in the way of you officiating the game. And you're going to find you are pretty good at it. If you're passionate about it, you've worked hard at it, you've studied, you've learn the mechanics, you're in the right position. Now you just have to let that all go. And if it's big enough to call a foul, then call it. My mom that lived with us our last 5 years of her life, she knew what a pass interference was. And if she said that's pass interference, well, then you better call that one. You know, if she didn't say anything, then let that go, because that's good officiating too, is that gray area,
For sure.
that area that is it a foul? Well, yeah, by rule it is, but did it affect the play? No, it didn't. Then let's let that go. And then we're the officials who the coaches and the players and the fans want to see again. Because sometimes fans are happy to see someone. You have a little interaction with them. You look at them in a timeout, and you look at their kid, and you say hi to them. Or before every game, Jimmy Mello, the partner I was with all the way up through from the Big East to arena football, everything that that Nate listed, we were always seemed to be together on the sideline. They liked the way we worked together. We'd go around before the game and take pictures with kids,
That's cool.
Or I on my wall here, I don't know, you probably can't see it,
I
but
can see there's kind of a glare, but
this one right here. Here, I'll get it. This one right here.
oh, yep.
Right here. It's a veteran that lost his legs in the war at a Ravens game. Without just me and Jimmy Mello and I being who we were, we'd go around the field and take pictures with little kids, put our arm around them, because you had a uniform on. So you maybe weren't the Ravens and the Browns, but you were someone that was out there. So they knew you must have somewhat important. And that man, it was obvious he was a wounded warrior. And we just went up and took a picture, and his wife and his family was all there. And like 2 weeks later, we got a letter that the wife had sent and said, my husband just felt so good that those officials came up to me and took that picture. I want them to know that we appreciated it. We don't know who they are. And the public relations director, obviously dug into it and saw it and sent it to us. And it's like I said, I got more golf stuff on here and one of my dad and this and that. But that's one of the ones I have up because without even knowing it, we touch someone's life. So
That's
we can
special.
do that as officials. We can pay attention to you don't want to pay attention to the drunk guy that's cursing you, but there's people that are happy that you're there and keeping their son's game going or their daughter's game going. So acknowledge them once in a while too.
Absolutely. So in your last answer, you started talking about Mount Rushmore. So as a football official,
Telling me.
who is on your officiating Mount Rushmore?
All right. Well, first of all, because I know the rules. All right. It's one thing I took pride in. I'm going to break a rule. And I want to say I have 5 on my Mount Rushmore.
That's okay. We got a bigger mountain for you to carve those out, so you're good.
All right, good. And I have to go with the people that have always been there. And they weren't just there when I was in the NFL. They were there in my ups and downs in life, my time away from football. And they never left me and my wife and my family. They were there. I have phone calls I was telling you on my cell phone, voicemail of Red Cashin and Jim Tunney, and just telling me to hang in there, that I can get through this and my family can get through it, and we're going to survive and look back on it and connect the dots. And you realize everything does happen in life for a reason. And I'm living proof of it. And so I'm going to go with Red Cashin. And everyone knows Red, first down, his wonderful voice. He just had such a good voice. And literally the day after I was hired in the NFL, the first time we had voicemail back then. Okay. Some people probably don't even know what that is. It was like this machine, and you would press the button when you got home from work.
There was a cassette tape.
And it's blinking when I get home from work the day after Mike Pereira called me. So I press the button, and it's this voice that I recognize. And he goes, Jimmy, this is Red Cashin, and I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to your wife, Luann. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, the legend in officiating is calling me the day after I'm hired. He don't want to talk to me either. He wants to.
My wife.
So long story short, a day or two passes and Red calls, and I answer the phone, and he said, congratulations. That's great. We're going to have a great time together, and we're going to interact. I'm going to train you and teach you and coach you, but enough about you. Put your wife on.
That is
It
awesome.
made such an impression on me that he knew this was like everybody in it together. And, I just can't forget it. And I have voicemails of him. And when he passed, you and I both said it was very difficult. He's such a great man.
Yes, he was.
Love him. He's on my Mount Rushmore. Jim Tunney, basically the same story, same thing. Jim had this Tunney side of sports. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Positive of everything that's happening, and almost like a Barry Manow, that you don't do things wrong, you do things the right way, ethics and this and that. And I loved Tunney's side of sports so much that I got my daughter reading it, and he just was always so positive. And I try to continue to do that. I try to teach and coach under that positive vein that Jim Tunney always did. Is, okay, you made a mistake. This is how we can correct it. This is probably why you did it. Talk to me why you did it. Talk to me about your confidence. Are you wavering? Are you thinking too much? His approach was just so phenomenal that I learned. And I'm going to put Red and Tunney together to count as one. I can only have four. I've already talked about Gerald Austin. I have to have Gerald Austin on it. Without Gerald, I wouldn't have gotten into Conference USA and my whole career take off, go to NFL Europe and everything else. So Gerald, Tom Finken, I've already talked about Tom and all I learned from him. And the reason Tom's on it for me is my position. It's like,
For sure.
he was my position coach, and just the way he taught me made me feel good about what I was doing out there. And I've tried to model myself as he did. He was a phys ed teacher and a coach just like me. And his wife, Goose, is just a great lady. And his wife and my wife have done things together when we got together in Palm Springs. And just, I got to have Fink on it because of what he's done for me in my career. And he continues because I just pull from him as I teach and coach now. And then my fifth one, because I'm going to break the rules, is Mike Pereira. And it goes back to that he saw me in my first NFL Europe game. It was like he'd followed me everywhere I went at the start of something. He was at my first preseason game, and I talked about the Ben Roethlisberger story and Tomlin saying he was fat. And he was the first supervisor I had in the NFL. He hired me. I had my big interview with him, and he reflected on what happened in the Big East, and he let me talk about it. And he said at the end of when I was done talking about it, you start feeling small again. You're at this interview with these 12 pillars of the NFL officiating department at this long table, and Mike Pereira is making you talk about a down period in your career. And when I was all done, I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to get hired because here I got let go by Tom. And he's like, that's great. We don't give a crap what that supervisor thought of officials. We've already hired 5 that were let go by him, and we're going to hire another 5, and you may be one of them. You weren't hired at that interview, but it was part of the process. So Mike was there for that. And then he made me talk about, he said in the interview, and he was so smart at asking this question at this interview. If you ever get hired, who's the first person you're going to call? And here's where my Sicilian emotions might take over. And I said, well, unfortunately, the first person I would call is my father, and he's in heaven, and I can't do that. And I got emotional, and in front of all these, like Johnny Greer and all, like I said, all these pillars of officiating, I'm getting emotional in front of, and basically my eyes are welling up, and I'm like, I'm not going to get hired when I walked out of there. I'm a grown man, and I got teary-eyed. And retrospect, fast forward after Mike hires me, he says, do you know what sold me on you in your interview? And I'm like, I have no idea, Mike. I thought I bombed it. I walked out of there saying I was never going to get hired. And I think I tripped and fell walking out of Park Avenue and stuff. I'm like, they're not going to hire some guy who can't even walk out of the office without falling down. And he said, he goes, because you were so forthright and so open and honest about your relationship with your father and not being able to tell him. And he goes, I have the same feelings for my father. And it's like, without knowing, we kind of struck a very unique relationship that he's carried on to this day. He brought me back when Alliance football and spring football came back. He brought me back. He has me working as a supervisor in his conference in the UFL. And he very much has made me feel like I've done more than just officiating in life by having me help serve on his board, because his foundation is truly what Mike should be known for. And if we can talk about that for a minute, I'd be very honored. And he has me on his board, and I'm very honored to be on it. I'm a nobody on his board. He has pillars of communities on his board, and he has me on it because he trusts my opinion and my willingness to state what I'm thinking. And I'm just very honored by it. So that's my
Love it. That's a solid Mount Rushmore. And, Mike, little story before I get into the question. So Mike and I actually became friends in about 2003. It was the year before I became the director of officials in New Mexico, and became kind of fast friends. It was a very immediate connection. And I was like, man, this guy's the best.
right.
So it was Mike who actually introduced me to Jerry Markbright, because Jerry I had seen at an NASO summit like in 2000. I couldn't talk to him because I was awestruck,
Oh,
because it was Jerry Markbright, and I grew up idolizing him and emulating him as a little girl watching him work.
that's awesome.
So Mike and I are at the NASO summit in 2004 in Washington, D.C., and I'm chatting with Mike, and Jerry walks by, and I like grabbed Mike by the arm. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Jerry Markbright. And he goes, he goes, go talk to him. And I was like, I can't. He goes, yeah, you can. So he drags me over so I can meet Jerry. And now, I see Jerry once a month and have breakfast with him. So it's just one of those things where I would have never forged that friendship because I was too starstruck by Jerry, because he was Jerry Markbright, and
Yeah. Do
Mike
I
was
have time to tell my Jerry Markbright story or no?
absolutely.
So I've already told Dana this, but Jerry wrote a book and it's great. It's The Right Call. Am I getting it? What's the name of it?
Oh my gosh, I have it in my
He's
office.
standing on I can see the cover, and he's
Yes.
standing there being
He's
Jerry. In the book, there's a chapter about Jerry felt on Sundays he was Superman out there. He put this uniform on, and there's this very average height person like me and stuff, but he felt like Superman on the field on a Sunday. And he said, but then I would go home, and on Monday morning, my wife had several cats. I think at the time she had 4 or 5 cats. I had to clean the cat box. And that was just me. I mean, my kitty was on my lap when the call started, and it's my wife's kitty. And on Sundays, I'd feel like I was Superman out there. And then Monday morning, there I was cleaning my wife's cat bag. And Jerry and I have that. He doesn't even know it, but I have that. I think of him literally every time. And now, now I'm a supervisor, but Monday morning coming back from the game in the UFL, there I am cleaning the cat box. And it's Jerry Hartbright. And, he was so self-effacing. I think that's what you see in him, and it draws you to you, because he isn't Superman and he doesn't pretend he is. He's like this normal,
totally.
will pick on himself more than anyone. But then here he is being so charisma. He's just a great guy, and
He is.
he can do anything for anyone. And the only reason he's not on my Mount Rushmore is I had to cut the roster, and I have so many stories of him that he's still in my memory bank, and he's really done so much for me. And the whole he refused to be a trainer during the lockout, and he went on national radio and said, I'm not going to train the officials that they bring in that aren't the ones that belong there. I mean, he always had your back as an official. He
100%.
literally is the guy you want to jump in the foxhole with you if you're in there. And
I
that
couldn't agree more.
Mike struck me the first time I heard him talk. So kind of like when you had he was talking at an NFLRA, which is the NFL's Referees Association. They were having like a clinic for college officials. So of course I went to it. It was in Dallas, and Mike's talking, and he had the 12 things he looks for in an NFL official, or the 12 traits of a good official. And the last one, I've never forgotten, and I use it on my whiteboard, and I write Mike Pereira. Actually, I write Mike Pereira / Billy King, because it's her quote. And her quote was, "Pressure is a privilege." I think that it was right around when I had gotten back into Conference USA with Gerald. And I think that's when I finally realized that the pressure is good. The chaos that's around you in officiating, if you look at it as a privilege, you don't get wrapped up in it. And I tried to talk to one of the officials this week in the UFL about it. I go, I think you're letting all that pressure like just surround you, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And you can. It's like you don't realize that you can do that. And that very simple quote that Mike said it the first time I ever heard him speak, "Pressure is a privilege," Billie Jean King, you know, it just says you're there because you belong. You just got to learn how to handle it.
That's
And
right.
it's a great quote. And Mike said it. It was the first time I heard it, and it helped propel me. And that's another reason he's on the Mount Rushmore. And many of the reasons that he just makes you feel like you're an equal. And,
Every
and
time.
does the same thing. And Red Cashin did the same thing. And Jim Tunney did the same thing. They impart their knowledge without making you feel like they're more knowledgeable than you. I don't, it's
And they embrace you the whole way.
the whole way. And they truly want to see you succeed. I
They
mean,
do.
Barry, I saw that the first time I was on a board meeting with you and Barry. I'm like, that man wants to see her succeed, and he's going to do everything he possibly can do to help her succeed. My dad used to say the saying was, "I can open the door, but you have to walk through it."
That's right.
And that's what I saw Barry do for you, and that's what Mike Pereira did for me, and Gerald Austin did for me, and Red did for me, without a doubt. Red opened so many doors, and then he just was so proud of you when you walked through it.
It was like his victory. Like it was his success. And
He didn't wanna have the success, he
that's the
wanted
best
you
part.
to have it, like, "Go,
100%.
I opened the door for you, now you walk through it," and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what anyone that's giving back and paying it forward is another way of saying it, because you didn't get there on your own.
So now you and I have to do all the door opening that the people before us did, and it's so important to find those people and invest in them and provide them encouragement, opportunities, support, all of the things that we've gotten throughout our careers, so that next generation feels that same warmth and love and just advocacy and somebody who will fight for them. And I think that that's so, so important. And we're going to stay on the topic of our good friend, Mike Pereira. So, you and I obviously serve on the B2B board of directors together, which is an incredible nonprofit organization that Mike founded. What do you hope is the legacy that our board leaves for the next generation of military members who become officials?
That they can continue their service, just isn't maybe to the country, it's to their area, it's to their youth in their area. And that's all they really want. I mean, we've been touched by so many of the veterans' struggles and PTSD, and some of them, there's one in my hometown, Jameson Pilgreen, who's like the poster child of battlefields to ball fields. He wouldn't even go out of his house. He was suffering from PTSD. He had a ricochet bullet off his helmet on his desk, and he ended up hearing about battlefields to ball fields on the radio. Some sports talk show guy had Mike on the radio, and Mike was promoting it. And he's like, "Well, I liked sports when I was younger, and I was good at them, and maybe I could officiate football and try to get something going here in my life." And he reached out to battlefields to ball fields, and you fast forward it to when Mike came to Rochester, New York, and hosted a golf tournament with me here to raise funds. And next thing you know, Jameson's inviting Mike and I to his wedding, and he's officiating 3 sports, and he's going out of the house again. And his wife swears that it's the officiating that got him back, and she was losing him. It's just, that's beyond like anything I ever did in officiating. You can't even compare it. And if that's what I'm going to be known for and associated with, then I'm okay with what I'm doing, and I'm perfectly comfortable with it. And I owe Mike the gratitude that he asked me to be on his board, and that I can help in my small little way. And Mike always kids about it. Well, I started the foundation because I didn't want to be known as just the guy who took the officials out of knickers, and into black pants. And I thank him because there's some pictures of me with the knickers and then in the black pants. And I gotta
Do you
think
like the black pants better?
I look a little better in the black pants. Yes.
Everybody looks better in the black pants.
Yes.
I'll
I
just
mean,
put that
those
out
things
there.
were just, oh
They were
boy,
terrible.
they were terrible. But our legacy people wore them, so we've got to honor
They sure
that.
did.
I still have a pair somewhere around here. I don't know where, but I think I do. Maybe I don't. But
Maybe you
anyhow,
burn those.
you know,
I agree, Jimmy. I think the battlefields to ball fields, I feel the same way. It's such a big mission and it's so important. And to be just a tiny part of that through our board service, what an honor to help veterans and active military find a way that they can serve their community in a different uniform and in a different way, because listening to their testimonials as they're transitioning from military into civilian life and how officiating is helping them do that. It's, I talk about emotional every single time. It's just their stories are incredible.
yeah.
To be affiliated with that is really cool.
Yeah, and also they are very keen on doing what we are talking about. You get a third year battlefields and ball fields guy and you say, hey, here's this first year veteran applying, and that's all you got to do.
They're all over it.
They're all over it. They mentor them. They say, this is what we didn't know when we started. This is how you go to the first scrim. I mean, like I remember my first scrim, I didn't even know like where the school was. They said, go to Brighton High School. I'm like, where's Brighton High
What
School?
is that?
What is that? And what do I do? What do I wear? Like you have so many questions when you start officiating,
And
and
you don't even know what to ask.
you're maybe a little afraid to ask. It's like, I don't want to be the one who asks, where do I, get my hat and jersey? It's like, but the battlefields, the ball fields people, they recognize that and they go help the others. And that's kind of the service that they did when they were veterans and in the military. They were serving and they just answer the call. They just do it. And that's like what we need more of in officiating is like, you don't have to be a veteran to realize somebody helped you. We've talked about a lot about that. Somebody helped you get there. Now you give back and also I've started to, Dana, recognize in the conferences that I work with, the Mountain West and Conference USA, oh, that guy's maybe a little bit of a veteran and he's willing to speak up at clinics. I'm going to utilize him. And so I
100%.
say, hey, Danny, can you at the next clinic be that guy that asks a couple of good questions? And then I have you, or I ask you a couple of good questions. I'm kind of grooming, for lack of a better word, you to become the next person that takes and I'm fine with it. When you want to take my job, I don't have to fly anywhere anymore. And so, but we've almost got to identify those ones that have that ability. And I think then that gets them more bought into the fact that they have to continue to give back and they're the next ones to do it. It's kind of like a rite of passage, or it's just, it's easy to find who they are. They're the ones
Sure
that are
is.
asking. Hockley said this when I was in NFL Europe, Jimmy, because he like really went out of his way to help me. And I'm like, everybody knows that Hockley, it's like I'm on the field and he's helping me. Why is he doing this? And I said to him, I go, Ed, why are you, it seems like you're helping me more than others. And he goes, Jimmy, it's not who asked the most questions, it's who asked the best questions. And he goes, you asked the best questions. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that, and that's like, you can find the next person to be the teacher and the leader by how they're associating with you at these clinics and at the field or when you're watching their crew work. You can sniff out someone who's just doing it because it's their own good, or are they doing it for the better of the crew? Like, I'm going to go back to the very first thing I said. Here lies a good crewmate. If someone says that about me, then I don't care what happened in my career. I'm okay with it because that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be someone who was part of the crew. I wanted to make the referee look good. If you make the referee look good, you're going to get asked back the next year. You're going to be on his crew and you're going to just take off. You're going to get where you want to go.
So we have a final question, and it's one
Okay.
that we ask all of our guests.
All right.
The From A to Zebra podcast has a mission each week to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners. What can you tell our audience about officiating that accomplishes this mission?
I think it excites you if you have a passion for it. You can have any game. We've already talked about it. You can have the junior college game if you're in college, and it's just as good and exciting if you give them. It's the most important game to those coaches and players at that time. So as an official, treat it like that. And then that's what this podcast can do, is really bring an audience that's interested in officiating a wealth of knowledge that they might not have got. Like if they watch this for an hour, they might have got a couple of nuggets from me. If that's, then it was worth it. I mean, I've had a great time and I could go on forever, but I think that's educating. When you find out things you didn't know, you've learned something. And elevate is just buoyant your enthusiasm. It's not go to the next level, in my opinion. Elevate is be excited for your next contest. If you're trudgering going to the next game and throwing your stuff in the, your umpire stuff in the trunk and going, oh, it's going to be miserable today, it's cold out. Well, dress right and it's not as cold, So, I mean, I've done games in Green Bay -20 below wind chill. So cold can be cold, but you were still excited to be there. If your passion is there, then you keep doing it. And maybe that's the final lesson they can learn from my little chat is all three of those: educate, elevate, and what was the last one?
Excite.
Excite. I mean, excite is just like, you should be excited. If you're not excited and it's a trudgery or you're just doing it for that check that you get, then because the money is not worth what you're doing until you get to the professional level. So, and that's what, 1% of all the officials. So you should be excited because you're helping the kids. You're helping the parents, might not recognize it, but you're helping them too. I mean, they're at the game, they're enjoying it. It's going to help their children playing sports. The benefits are, we need way more of that. Kids playing everything and playing for the fun of it. You can make it fun for the kids too. There's so many things you can do as an official and stay involved that we could go on all night. And your podcast is doing all three of those. Your mission is being accomplished, in my humble opinion.
Well, if it weren't for guests like you, we wouldn't be able to do any of those things. So, to my dear friend Jimmy DeBell, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. You and I both said it. We could talk until sometime late next week, but we won't do that. We'll have to eat dinner or something at some point. But
have me back again on another letter or something.
Would love that. We can make that happen. We've got lots of letters, so it's good.
Nice.
So to our listeners, thanks for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. You can also find our full library of podcasts from all seasons on the resources page of refreps.com. And thanks to our friends at RefReps. We'll see you next time. When I fall without fail,
when I land. Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra Podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.